Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Continuing Education, SOCE, Master of Science, Food Nutrition, MSCDFSM, Revised, Second Year, AIM-FN 005 Clinical Therapeutic Nutrition Unit, 17 Nutritional Management of Neurological Disorders, 17.1 Introduction. Your friend's aged father, over a period of time, has become very confused, forgetful, and is unable to do many things he could do earlier. He has also developed eating problems. Lakshmi's baby suffered from anoxia, lack of oxygen, at birth, which has led to developmental impairment and difficulty in chewing and swallowing. Ramesh suffered spinal injury in a road accident. This has resulted in a partial paralysis with associated impaired feeding ability. As a nutrition expert, how do you manage these situations? First of all, you must understand that all of these occur as a consequence to neurological problems. In this unit, we will provide you with the salient guidelines for the better management of these disorders. Objectives. After studying this unit, you will be able to identify some common neurological disorders, their etiology and clinical features, explain the consequences of these disorders on feeding and nutrition, and suggest feeding and dietary recommendations to meet the needs of these disorders. Let us begin our discussion by first understanding what are the different types of neurological disorders. 17.2 Common neurological disorders. Neurological disorders may be of two types from the nutritional viewpoint. What are these? Let us read and find out. I. Neurological disorders arising due to imbalanced nutritional intake, deficiency or excess. Common examples are the neurological manifestations of beriberi, pellagra, pernicious anemia, Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome due to nutrient deficits and stroke, hypertension and diabetes due to nutrient excesses, unbalanced diet leading to malnutrition. Alcoholism and malabsorption could also be other causative factors. 2. Neurological disorders of non-nutritional etiology. Some of the common disorders are Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, spinal and neuro trauma. Dysphagia, difficulty in swallowing, though not a disease, is a symptom which may occur in several neurological disorders. In this unit, we will focus on the common neurological disorders of non-nutritional etiology. Before we move on to their discussion, let us quickly review a few relevant aspects about central nervous system. CNS. 17.3 The central nervous system, CNS, some relevant physiological aspects. A brief overview of some of the consequences of CNS damage will help us to understand neurological disorders better. Refer to figure 17.A. This figure will help you recall the major components and parts of the CNSI. The brain and the spinal cord, about which you have already studied in the Applied Physiology course, AIM-FN 001 in Unit 9. Lesions of different parts of the CNS can result in different dysfunctions with different nutritional significance. Signs of weakness are the most quantifiable clinical symptom of any neurological disease. Any damage to any part of the CNS results in the inability of the body to meet its nutritional and metabolic needs. Some consequences of CNS damage of nutritional significance are given in the table 17.1. Figure 17.2 illustrates the lobes of the cerebral cortex which may get damaged. Figure 17.2 Lobes of cerebral cortex. Look at the screen, table 17. Some consequences of CNS damage of nutritional significance. Area of damage consequences: frontal lobe base, loss of sense of smell, visual changes, frontal lobe central motor apraxia or inability to carry out a complex activity in spite of understanding it, frontal lobe posterior seizures, convulsions, temporal lobe memory and speech impairment, occipital lobe vision deficits, brainstem damage of cranial nerves which innervate face and head including eyes, ears, jaws, tongue, pharynx and facial muscles. Dysphagia and aspiration risk can occur. Hypothalamus damage of center for hunger and satiety leading to overeating or anorexia problems. Spinal cord motor impairment paralysis based on location of injury with resultant feeding difficulties. Peripheral nerves and neuromotor junction impaired nutritional and metabolic balance. What are the nutritional issues related to neurological disorders? What should be the goals of nutritional care? How to feed such patients where dysphagia is the commonest problem? Let us read and find out about these and many other issues next. 17.4 Neurological diseases, feeding and nutritional issues, general goals of nutritional care. Nutritional management of the patients with neurological disease is complex, as mechanisms and abilities needed for adequate nourishment get impaired. Reduced functional capacity would impair the ability to procure and prepare food. Self-feeding impairment may arise due to limb weakness, poor positioning of the body due to hemiparesis or partial paralysis. Hemianopsia or half-sided blindness, apraxia, inability to perform, mental confusion, fatigue and early satiety can affect feeding. Weakness of the tongue, facial and masticator muscles can lead to prolonged feeding time and coughing or choking while eating. Chewing and swallowing difficulties could also arise. Emotional and metabolic stress and trauma can compound the eating and nutritional problems, as these can have an effect on the nutritional requirements. In view of the long-term disabling consequences, most neurological disorders require special rehabilitative care. Personalized nutrition care plays a vital role in this rehabilitation for healing and recovery, along with physical, mental and social support and involvement of the patient and the family. Let us then move on to the nutritional care. The important goals of nutritional care are to prevent further disability, restore or achieve optimal potential of the patient's physical, mental and social abilities, and improve the quality of life of the patient. In order to meet these goals, the following are necessary: assessing the nutritional, physical and other parameters of the individual and monitoring the same at intervals to assess the improvement. Regular evaluation to improve patient outcome in terms of quality and quantity of food consumed, weight changes, clinical assessment. Eating and feeding assessment to identify need for special foods or eating devices as illustrated in figure 17.3. Dysphagia assessment for textural and other food or feeding modifications. Nutritional therapy recommendations based on individual needs. For example, nutritional deficiencies like anemia may have to be identified as iron is required by the neurotransmitters serotonin and dopamine. Nutrition counseling of the patient, family, and caregiver. A few additional points related to the patient care that need to be kept in mind include paying attention to the patient's living situation, facilities, health, economic status, psychosocial aspects and emotional adjustments. Neglect or overprotection should be avoided to help develop a positive sense of self and the will to fight against a difficult situation. A combined effort of the rehabilitation team, including the occupational and speech therapists, is desirable, besides the nutrition professional. Next, let us move on to the most common neurological disorder, that is dysphagia. 17.5 Dysphagia dysphagia is the inability to swallow or difficulty in swallowing. It is a common problem in those with neurological disorders and can occur in any of the three phases of swallowing: oral, pharyngeal, and esophageal. Many patients may not be able to consume adequate intake of food and hence special feeding methods such as enteral feeding may have to be adopted. What is the cause of dysphagia? The etiology and the clinical sign symptoms are described next. 17 May 2001 Etiology and clinical features. The cause of this neurological disorder can be mechanical or paralytic. The mechanical cause is primarily due to surgical resection or to alteration of one or more organs of swallowing owing to trauma, obstruction, cancer, or other disease. The paralytic type results from a lesion in the cerebral cortex or cranial nerves of the brainstem, in particular the medulla oblongata. The most common cause of the paralytic type is accident, head injury, brain diseases which may affect the nerves causing dysphagia. If we understand the swallowing process, we can understand the problems that arise in neurological damage better. So let us get to know more about the swallowing process. Swallowing has three phases. Oral phase. In this, food is placed in the mouth, mixed with saliva, chewed if required, and formed into a bolus by the tongue. The tongue pushes the food to the rear of the oral cavity against the hard and soft palate. 2. Pharyngeal phase. This is initiated when the bolus is propelled into the esophagus. The soft palate gets raised at this stage to close off the nasopharynx to prevent nasopharyngeal regurgitation. 3. Esophageal phase. This is the final phase in which the bolus continues through the esophagus into the stomach. This phase is involuntary. In neurological disorders, damage to cranial nerves can lead to weak and poorly coordinated tongue movements, which results in problems in completing the oral phase of swallowing. Weakened lip muscles cause an incomplete mouth closure with sucking difficulties. There may be a difficulty in forming a cohesive bolus and moving it through the oral cavity. Loss of sensation and facial weakness can result in food being pocketed in the buccal recesses of the mouth without the patient being aware of it. Poorly coordinated pharyngeal phase can cause gagging, choking, and nasopharyngeal regurgitation. Aspiration of food into the lungs is a complication of dysphagia. Unless care is taken. Thus, some symptoms commonly associated with dysphagia are drooling, coughing, and choking while eating, oral food retention, gurgling voice quality, and feeling of lump in the throat. There is an increased risk of aspiration and pneumonia. Having studied the etiology and symptoms, let us next learn about the feeding and nutritional management of dysphagia. 17 May 2002 Feeding and nutritional management, a multidisciplinary approach, is essential for successful management of dysphagia. Patient, nurse, physician, dietitian, and swallowing therapist need to coordinate in this endeavor. For feeding, patient should be upright at 90-degree angle with hips flexed, feet flat on the floor, and head slightly forward. Food of liquid consistency often causes the greatest problem. Hence, attention has to be paid to the consistency and texture of food as enumerated here with. Consistency and texture. Aspiration of liquids, including water, into the lungs can result in complications. To avoid this problem and yet fulfilling the fluid needs, liquids could be thickened with starch or milk powder. Intake of caffeine beverages is best limited as these have a diuretic effect and may lead to mild dehydration and fatigue. Foods that form a cohesive bolus within the mouth must be selected. Those that break apart, such as plain rice, chopped meat, should not be given. Sticky foods that adhere to the mouth should be avoided as they cause oral manipulation problems and fatigue. Dual texture must not be given, such as canned fruit with juice, soup with noodles, and dry cereal with milk. One could moisten food with gravy to facilitate a bolus. A variety of food items should be served in an appetizing manner with as many characteristics to a normal food. Patience should be gradual progressive transitions in the texture and consistency of food with pureed to ground to soft textured foods and eventually to all textured foods. Hence, paying attention to improved and appropriate taste, texture and temperature of food facilitates swallowing. Cool temperature. Sauces and gravies which lubricate food and prevent its fragmentation in the oral cavity makes swallowing easier. Moist and soft foods are usually better tolerated. Table 17.2 and 17.3 summarize some feeding tips for dysphagia. In acute cases of dysphagia, if oral intake is not possible or inadequate, or if there are increased metabolic demands for nutrients, then nutritional support may be required. Enteral nutrition needs to be given. Table 17.2 Some dietary tips for dysphagia, dysfunction. Dietary tips: slow, weak, uncoordinated swallowing, semi-solid consistency to form a cohesive bolus, textured foods as diced cooked vegetables, small. Frequent meals, well seasoned. Flavored, aromatic, sweet foods. Cold temperatures, avoid sticky, bulky and thin liquids, poor oromotor control, semi-solid foods that form a cohesive bolus, small frequent meals, avoid slippery and sticky foods and purees and thin liquids, reduced oral sensation food placed in most sensitive area of mouth, different textures, not mixed to maximize sensation, highly seasoned foods, cold temperatures, avoid hot foods and mixing of different textures. Table 17.3 gives us a list of desirable and undesirable foods based on the consistency and texture. Table 17.3 Food consistency and textures. Desirable foods, foods forming a cohesive bolus. Egg dishes, soft cheese and paneer, pasta dishes, rice with gravy, ground meats with gravy, gelatin-based desserts, hot cereals and vegetables in a gravy or sauce. Undesirable foods, foods that fall apart, dry crumbly bread, dry cracker biscuits, thin pureed foods, plain chopped raw vegetables and fruit, plain ground meat, thin cereals and plain dry rice. Desirable foods, medium thick liquids, vegetable juice, blender-raised cream, soups, blender-raised fruit juices, milk, shakes and soft custard. Undesirable foods, sticky and bulky foods, fresh white bread, plain mashed potato, banana, bran-enriched cereals, large pieces of meat, raw vegetables and fruit. Desirable foods, semi-soft thick liquids, curd, yogurt, pureed fruit, ice cream, soft smooth desserts, frozen shakes and frozen juices. Undesirable foods, thin liquids, apple, orange and other citrus juices, milk, tea, coffee, water and soda. With this we end our study on dysphagia. We move on to Alzheimer's disease next. 17.6 Alzheimer's disease, named after the German neurologist who first described it. Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause of progressive dementia due to the degeneration of nerve cells in the brain and shrinkage of brain matter. Extracellular deposits of amyloid-forming protein or amyloid plaques are reported in the cerebral vessels. Let us now find out what factors lead to this disorder and what its clinical features are. 17.6.1 Etiology and clinical features. The probable risk factors include a genetic basis, head injury, low education level, Down syndrome and mother's age at birth. However, no single factor has been proven to be responsible for this disease. The clinical manifestations of Alzheimer's disease along with the nutrition-related changes may be divided into 3 stages. Impairment of a wide range of neurological functions is involved, being a disease of the cortical neurons. The 3 stages are: Stage I, there is an increased forgetfulness, anxiety and depression. Associated nutrition-related changes include difficulty in food preparation, forgetting to eat, taste and smell changes, altered food choices and impaired appetite regulation. Stage 2, there is a memory loss, especially for the recent events. There is disorientation and personality changes occur. Dietary manifestations include an increase in energy requirements as a result of agitation, holding food in the mouth, forgetting to eat and swallow, forgetting the use of eating equipment except perhaps a spoon, and eating with hand. Stage 3, this is characterized by severe mental confusion, psychosis, memory loss, personal neglect and distinct feeding problems. There may be no recognition of food with refusal to open the mouth for eating. Persons with Alzheimer's disease thus have impaired ability to recognize hunger, thirst or satiety. They are prone to dehydration. As the disease progresses, their attention span reduces. They are easily distracted and forgetful and may stop eating or not eat enough or try and eat inedible items. Eventually, nutritional support may be required to sustain them. The nutritional management of such patients is discussed next. 17 June 2002 Feeding and nutritional management, keeping the clinical manifestations of Alzheimer's disease in mind. Treatment involves personalized care, keeping the patient well nourished, reducing anxiety and stress and improving the quality of life. The main objectives of nutritional management, hence, are to provide adequate nutrition, prevent malnutrition, and devise methods to tackle feeding problems. Several strategies may have to be used to achieve these objectives, keeping the functional impairments in mind. Some of these, based on the stage of the disease and individual needs, are supervising meal times with minimal distractions, assessing chewing and swallowing ability and providing foods of appropriate consistency, initiating the activity of eating by making the person touch or taste the food, giving one food at a time in small bowls so as to avoid stress of food choices, supervising to avoid eating of spilt food or inedible items, giving only a spoon or finger foods. In case of inability to use other eating equipment, encouraging individual appropriate feeding techniques, permitting adequate feeding time to increase intake, use of nutrient-dense foods, frequent snacks and nutritional supplements to avoid malnutrition, avoiding finger foods and using only a small spoon in case of tendency to take a large bolus, and guarding against aspiration in case of dysphagia. To ensure adequate food and nutrient intake, continuous assessment of nutritional status is desirable, supported by behavior modification if required. Patient guidance and supervision, including continuous verbal instructions during each step of feeding, may also be needed, like to eat, chew and stop chewing. Let us move on to the discussion of the next disorder, i.e. Parkinson's disease. 17.7 Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is a degenerative central nervous system (CNS) condition characterized by progressive loss of cells within substantia nigra. Substantia nigra is a portion of the midbrain, as illustrated in figure 17.4, which is thought to be involved in certain aspects of movement and attention. It consists of 2 subdivisions, the pars compacta and the pars reticulata. The cells within the substantia nigra release the neurotransmitter dopamine, and it is the loss of dopamine that is primarily responsible for the motor defects. The disease is much more common in senior citizens and is slightly more prevalent in men than women. What are the causative factors and the clinical features of this disease? Read the next section and find out. 17 जुलाई 2001 Etiology and clinical features. The cause of Parkinson's is unknown. Genetic predisposition. In most cases the reason for the death of these dopamine neurons is unknown, and exposure to neurotoxins and industrial toxins are said to be important risk factors. Viral infections such as encephalitis can also produce the disease condition. The common clinical features of the disease include slowness of movement, inability to initiate movements, muscular rigidity, resting tremor, postural instability, weight loss. Parkinsonism describes the common symptoms of Parkinson's disease such as tremor, rigidity, akinesia, inability to initiate movements, or bradykinesia, slow movement, and postural instability. Considering the pathology of Parkinson's disease, the feeding and nutritional care is a crucial aspect in the management of the patients suffering from this disease. The next section focuses on the nutritional management of Parkinson's disease. 17 जुलाई 2002 Management, drug, feeding and nutritional care. There is no cure yet for Parkinson's disease, but its symptoms can be minimized with drug therapy. Levodopa, or a precursor of dopamine, is used mostly. Once levodopa enters the brain, it can be decarboxylated to dopamine, thus replenishing the depleted neurotransmitter dopamine. Levodopa may produce gastric symptoms and nausea, which can interfere with food intake. For many patients, these symptoms are mild and tolerance to nausea does develop. The large amino acids generated from metabolic breakdown of proteins can inhibit the absorption of levodopa, and hence is best to have it 1 hour before meals. Very large protein meals can reduce the effect of levodopa, hence manipulating the proteins intake well can give a better performance in patients. For example, patient wishing to remain in an optimum state of activity could benefit from redistributing the protein. Daytime restriction of dietary protein 10 g or less up to 5 p.m. has been shown to improve the efficacy of levodopa. After 5 p.m. the remaining day's protein requirement can be consumed. This way the patient can have adequate performance of daytime activities. Hence, from our discussion above, it is evident that nutrient-drug interaction is an important aspect that we need to consider in the nutritional management of Parkinson's disease. We have already touched on this aspect earlier in Unit 7. Weight loss is also an occasional problem with patients. This could be due to increased calorie needs resulting from involuntary movements, difficulty in feeding, nausea, medicine-related factors. Dementia, depression, and dysphagia could be causative factors. Constipation is also a problem in Parkinson's disease patients due to low-grade autonomic function or medication that may contribute to constipation. Difficulty in swallowing can reduce fluid and fiber intake, leading to constipation. As the disease progresses, some food-related difficulties appear. These are difficulty in food preparation and eating due to tremors, gradual development of chewing and swallowing difficulties and risk of aspiration, tendency for constipation, and prolonged meal times up to 1 hour due to muscle rigidity leading to an impaired head and neck control and hence feeding difficulties. These problems have to be taken into consideration while planning meals. For example, foods rich in fiber and which can be cut into pieces and made into cohesive bites could be given. Very liquidy foods may be difficult to handle, but care should be taken to ensure fluid intake is adequate to prevent constipation and hypertension. Low blood pressure. Small frequent meals with more carbohydrates and less fat may be better tolerated in view of the gastric side effects and delayed gastric emptying. Diets given should be balanced and nutritionally adequate. Frequent intake of high-protein snacks has deleterious effects upon Parkinson disease control. Hence, this should be avoided. Supplementation of vitamin B6, pyridoxine, should be avoided as this vitamin can facilitate the premature conversion of levodopa to dopamine, thus reducing the potency of the drug. Thus, the dietary goals in Parkinson disease can be highlighted as under. Dietary goals in Parkinson's disease. The main goals include maintain desirable weight, promote absorption of anti-Parkinson drug levodopa, lessen swallowing difficulties as a result of disease of medication, alter food consistency or texture, drink sufficient fluids or have good source of fiber for effective bowel function, and prevent constipation, and redistribute the protein. So in our discussion above, we have learnt about the drug and diet suited for Parkinson's disease patients. Remember, besides the dietary goals, individualized treatment according to each patient's symptoms. 17.8 Epilepsy. Epilepsy is a neuromuscular disorder in which transient seizures recur due to an abnormal brain activity. The brain, through an orderly electric excitation of its nerve cells, controls all activities of the body. When, however, due to some reason, the discharge is unregulated and chaotic, an epileptic seizure can occur. Seizures may occur spontaneously or may be triggered by a stimulus. What factors lead to these, and what are its clinical features? Let us read and find out in our next section. 17 August 2001 Etiology and clinical features. This disorder usually starts in childhood, with the peak incidence between birth and 2 years. Etiological factors include birth trauma, head injury, brain infection, and metabolic imbalance in the body, neurotoxins, or a genetic basis. It may also be idiopathic or of unknown origin. About 1/3 persons outgrow this condition and do not require medication. In 1/3, drugs can control the seizures. In the remaining, the condition usually gets worse. Any of the etiological factors in epilepsy can result in intermittent derangement of the nervous system due to a sudden excessive disorderly discharge of cerebral neurons. Different types of seizures may occur. 1. Generalized or tonic-clonic seizures, where the entire brain cortex is involved, and post-seizure disorientation may last for a few minutes to few hours. 2. Pathith mal or absence seizures, which involve no post-seizure fatigue or disorientation. And 3. Partial seizures, where there is an epileptogenic focus in the brain tissue, but electrical activity may spread across the entire brain. The type of seizure determines the drug therapy and nutrient requirement. Anticonvulsant drug reactions are of relevance in nutritional management. The general symptoms of epilepsy include weakness, fainting, uncoordinated muscle movement. Based on the drug, common side effects include nausea, vomiting, anorexia, or increased appetite, diarrhea or constipation, decreased taste sensation, increased vitamin D and K catabolism, low levels of serum calcium, vitamins B6 and B12 and folate. Long-term usage may lead to rickets in children and cause liver damage. The management of epileptic patients is described next. 17 August 2002 Management, drug, feeding and nutritional care. The primary treatment of epilepsy is anticonvulsant drugs. The focus of nutritional management is a diet which is appropriate for growth during childhood and maintenance in adults. Nutrient-drug interactions also must be considered and remedial steps must be taken. Whereas anticonvulsant drugs may cause side effects of nutritional significance, folic acid supplements can interfere with the action of one of the drugs. Phenytoin. Food intake can delay the absorption of phenobarbital. Low serum albumin due to a state of malnutrition can result in a higher drug concentration in the blood and thus toxicity. In mild moderate epilepsy, ketogenic diets are sometimes recommended. A ketogenic diet is a high-fat diet with a ratio of 4:1 or 3:1 of fat to carbohydrate and protein calories. Usually about 75% of the recommended energy intake for weight and height is given. Protein given is about 1 g/kg for growth. This leaves a minimal amount of carbohydrate to make up the calories. This diet may be used for up to 3 years and has been reported effective in young children. A ketogenic diet is designed to produce ketone bodies as a result of incomplete oxidation of fat, although the exact mechanism is not known. The ketone body produced by incomplete oxidation of fat, acetone, acetoacetic acid and hydroxybutyric acid, are thought to have an anticonvulsant action and hence are beneficial. The ketogenic diet is initiated after an initial period of fasting for 24 से 72 hours till ketosis is established. There are two types of ketogenic diets: A. Traditional diet using long-chain triglycerides, and B. The medium-chain triglyceride diet containing coconut and palm kernel oil, which results in ketosis easily. Next, let us look at the dietary recommendations. Dietary recommendations: 3:01 ketogenic diet is recommended. The time taken for reversing the usual ratio of 1:3 to 3:1 is about 4 days. How will we know if our ketogenic diet is working? Very easy, just test the urine for ketone bodies. There are a few foods to be avoided in a ketogenic diet. These are listed in table 17.4 along with those foods which may be given as desired. Table 17.4 Foods to be included and avoided in a ketogenic diet. Foods to avoid for ketogenic diet. The following foods contain substantial amounts of carbohydrates and should be avoided. All breads and cereals, cakes or cookies, pastries, carbonated beverages, sherbet and sweet juices, puddings and pies, candy and chewing gum, jams, jellies, marmalade and honey, syrups, sugar and condensed milk. Foods to be given as desired. The following foods contain negligible amounts of protein, fat and carbohydrate and may be used more frequently. Broth or consomme, coffee, normal and decaffeinated, and tea, unsweetened cocoa powder and gelatin, mustard, dry, salt and pepper, parsley, and other herbs, and vinegar. For preparing meals you could choose one of the following food items: meat, cheese, chicken, 30 g, egg, fish, 50 g, cottage cheese, 50 g, processed cheese, 30 g, pulse, 30 g, cereal, bread, 25 g, wheat, 20 g, crackers, 20 g, rice, 50 g, cooked noodles, 50 g, cooked vegetables, 100 g, beans, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, cucumber, eggplant, mushrooms, mustard greens, radish, spinach, tomatoes, turnip. Fats: butter, 5 g, cooking fat, 5 g, nuts, walnuts, 5 g, whipped cream, 60 g, fruits: apple, 40 g, apricots, 60 g, banana, 30 g, gooseberries, 50 g, cherries, 40 g, grapes, 40 g, orange, 100 g, mango, 35 g, melon, 100 g, papaya, 60 g, peach, 60 g, pineapple, 40 g, plums, 40 g, milk, buttermilk, 120 g, skimmed milk, 120 g. With these dietary recommendations we end our study of epilepsy. Finally, let us review the neurotrauma and the spinal trauma and the nutritional management of patients suffering from these traumas. 17.9 Neurotrauma. Neuro or head trauma includes brain injury. Some of the effects of this are fever, neutrophilia, type of white blood cells which provide important defense mechanism are increased in number, muscle breakdown, altered amino acid metabolism, increased organ demise. How to prevent these conditions? Let us read and find it out in our following subsection on nutritional management. Feeding and nutritional management. The main objective of nutritional management is to counteract the hypermetabolism associated with inflammation. The basal energy expenditure, B, in neurotrauma patients can be 160 से 170% of the normal, along with a negative nitrogen balance and weight loss. The nutritional treatment has mostly two phases. Let us get to know what these are. A. Initial phase. In this, the life-threatening conditions need to be controlled first. Soon the nutritional support must start because hypermetabolism contributes to excess energy expenditure and hypercatabolism to increased protein demand. This increased energy 1.752 B and protein demand 1.52.5 g/kg IBW must be met initially via nutritional support methods or enteral-parenteral nutrition. If nutritional replacement is not provided, 10% decrease in lean body mass can occur within a week, with up to 30% loss in 2 to 3 weeks. This is associated with increased mortality. B. Rehabilitation phase. Once the patient stabilizes and starts recovering. Besides nutritional replacement, there is a need to assess functional disabilities related to eating. Dysphagia, difficulty in chewing, physical handicaps in eating can arise as an outcome of the injury. Accordingly, food consistency and texture may need to be adjusted to ensure adequate intake. In the end, let us review the spinal trauma and its management. 17.10 Spinal trauma. Spinal trauma or spinal cord injury, commonly due to accidents, falls, sports injury can result in serious disabling consequences. The spinal cord damage disrupts the transmission of nerve impulses from the brain to the peripheral nerves and muscles, resulting in a loss of muscle function depending on the site of injury. Immobilization commonly occurs due to quadriplegia, paralysis from neck down, or paraplegia, paralysis of the lower part of the body. Metabolic consequences of the trauma include negative nitrogen balance, low serum albumin, loss of calcium, loss of bone and skin collagen, and weight loss. Malnutrition is a frequent outcome. The spinal cord responds to insult in a similar manner as the brain. Bleeding and confusion may appear first and then fibrosis. In general, frequency of complications which affect the nutrition may vary, and these are constipation, pressure, ulcers, obesity and pain. So then let us get to know how to manage this condition. Feeding and nutritional management. The main objectives of nutritional management are to meet the nutritional needs of the initial acute phase and then the rehabilitation phase. During the latter phase, special feeding requirements have to be considered along with the requirements of associated complications. What are these phases? Let us read and find out. Acute phase. Nutritional support should start within 3 से 5 days or as early as possible to prevent the onset of malnutrition and secondary illness. Due to reduced fat-free mass, and altered sympathetic nervous system activity, these individuals have reduced resting metabolic rate 14 to 27%. Frequent assessment of the metabolic rate is desirable as it tends to vary. This can avoid the complication of overfeeding. Reported recommendations for adults are about 23 kg for quadriplegics and 28 kg for paraplegics, keeping in mind that increase in metabolic rate is less compared to other trauma conditions. Rehabilitation phase. Once the patient's condition stabilizes, individualized diets need to be recommended based on the energy and nutrient requirements and feeding capacity. It is usually desirable to adjust energy to maintain the weight, thus say 15 pounds below the IBW to prevent excess weight gain, which can add to the medical problems and physical handicap. Protein intake should be based on requirements and must be adequate to maintain muscle mass and tissue integrity. A negative nitrogen balance should be guarded against. Minerals and vitamins must be adequate based on requirements. Supplements may be needed if the dietary intake is poor. Common complications with spinal trauma patients include pressure sores or decubitus, ulcers, hypercalcia and renal stones, constipation due to neurogenic bowel, and depression. Nutrition has a relevant role in all conditions. Pressure sores develop due to immobilization, loss of pressure sensation, poor circulation and skin breakdown. Anemia occurs resulting in less oxygen supply to the sore area. Low serum albumin, excess weight loss also contribute to the complications. The nutritional management lies in making up the protein deficit. About 1.5 to g protein kg is recommended with supplements of vitamin C and zinc. Hypercalcia and thus a tendency for renal stones arises due to prolonged immobility. A balanced intake of calcium and phosphorus is beneficial. While protein requirements may be increased, excess should be avoided as it can cause calcium withdrawal from bones. Constipation arising due to neurogenic bowel requires a regular bowel schedule with high fiber and fluid intake. Depression often follows recovery as the person comes to terms with disability. An adequate balanced diet resulting in slight increased muscle mass with concerned nutritional care can help improve quality of life. 17.11 Summary. In this unit, we learnt about nervous system and the related disorders, which are termed as neurological disorders. Neurological disorders may be of nutritional or non-nutritional etiology, but both require nutritional intervention. Common non-nutritional neurological disorders, some being progressive in nature, in which feeding and nutrition are important, are Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, neuro and spinal trauma. Here, we realized that dysphagia is a problem common to many of the disorders. Personalized nutrition care plays an important role, its objectives being to maintain adequate nutrition, prevent further disability, and restore potential function. Social, psychological, and emotion support improves patient outcome, best achieved by the combined efforts of a rehabilitation team including the family, occupational and speech therapists, and nutritionists. Finally, we learnt that individual nutritional needs have to be assessed and adequate energy, protein, energy sources and minerals and vitamins provided to promote functional, tissue and organ integrity. Eating skills and eating desire also requires assessment, and persons may require help to develop new ways of eating using special foods or eating equipment and utensils. Nutritional support may be needed in some neurological diseases. Drug-nutrient interactions may also require attention. Social, psychological and emotion support improve patient outcome, which can be best achieved by the combined efforts of a rehabilitation team including the family, physicians, nurse, dietitians, occupational and speech therapist, caregivers, family. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video with next chapter.